And welcome to This Is Now. We begin with the very latest on the Mililani Mauka wildfire, which is now burning for a third straight day. We received this photo from HFD's drone team minutes ago. This is an overhead look of how the fire is seen from up above. HFD suspended its operations overnight. Back at it this morning. Throughout the entire time, though, the drone team was keeping watch. Here's how it looks from up above. Now, it continues to grow, albeit very slowly, charring more than 700 acres. Containment remains at 30%. Casey Lunn was in the neighborhood this morning and has the very latest.
Aloha from Kapanoi Street here in Mililani Mauka. This is really as close as we're able to physically get to that wildfire, the Mililani Mauka wildfire. But we've been up here throughout the day, and there is a lot of ash on the ground. There's ash on the sidewalk, and as you see cars driving by, ash on vehicles. And here's why. Take a look at just how much smoke is being put out by this wildfire. Yesterday, it grew to 700 acres. This morning, HFD was able to get up in their Air 1 helicopter and do an assessment to get an idea of how it grew overnight. They had drone teams flying over that fire, keeping an eye on things to see how it developed into the nighttime hours. Of course, those air resources that they've been using are not able to fly at night. HFD, again, using their Air 1 for bucket drops. They also had assistance from the Hawaii National Guard with their Chinook helicopter, flying for about 8 hours yesterday, dumping some 45,000 gallons of water on the fire. We know that there's some farms that are closer to the wildfire than any of the homes are here in Mililani Mauka, but we still know, as far as HFD has told us, no structures are threatened. It's pretty far up in that Kipapa Gulch, but because it's so far up there, that terrain really difficult. There's no real access for vehicles, for fire engines, or for hand crews, so they've been having to battle this fire from the sky. We also know that it is creating health concerns. We know that some folks have been treated with smoke inhalation, and that's not surprising. If you're waking up or going to bed at night in Mililani Mauka, really a lot of parts of central Oahu, you are well aware of the smoke that's lingering in the air, and we're not getting a lot of relief from the wind. Now, part of that is good because that wind's not moving the wildfire along, but it's also letting that smoke sit in the valley, sit in central Oahu, and linger. So that's causing some folks some health problems. A reminder, if you have respiratory issues, you're asthmatic, to stay indoors as much as you can, and of course rely on EMS if you're short of breath or you get in trouble physically, but best to just stay indoors as much as you can until that fire is a little bit more under control and some of the smoke moves out of the area. And also a reminder for residents, after having several days of heavy smoke, it's important that you change your air filter in your home. Those are going to get very dirty with all the smoke that's been hanging around for the last few days. Of course, we're going to stay on top of this. It is not showing signs that it's coming down closer to any of these neighborhoods, but with the dry conditions we have, and of course with the recent tragedy over on Maui, it's definitely a cause for concern, something we should all pay attention to, and that's what we're doing here at Hawaii News Now. Reporting in Mililani Mauka, I'm Casey Lunn. For now, we'll send things back into the studio.
And just a reminder, the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency and the city conducted siren testing at 11:45 today. As the wildfire above Mililani Mauka continues to burn, officials remind the public it was only a test. The fire remains in a remote mountainous area and does not pose a threat to any structures. Well, just in at noon, we have learned the identity of another victim of the Lahaina wildfire. Maui County today released the identification of 76-year-old Lee Rogo. He is one of the 99 individuals who lost their lives in the disaster that tore through Maui in August. Officials said so far there is only one person who has yet to be identified. The next phase of West Maui's recovery begins today as the remainder of the area reopens to tourism. That includes the span from Kahana to Ka'anapali. That area was not included in the first reopening phase, which began on October 8th. Previously, the plan was to open West Maui in 3 phases, but officials decided to combine the final 2 steps. Mayor Bisson says the decision followed discussions with the community as well as his Lahaina advisory team. The American Red Cross says housing for displaced residents is not in jeopardy, including for those staying in hotels. More body camera video released by Maui police shows the courageous work of first responders during the August firestorm. But as Daryl Huff reports, some details in the footage could end up being part of the investigation into how government leaders handled the crisis. A warning, the video you are about to see may be traumatizing.
The videos show officers choking from smoke, dodging flaming embers, and sometimes fighting the fires themselves. They also reveal key moments that will be part of the investigation into whether the disaster could have been prevented or better managed. Just before 3 in the afternoon, the howling wind shoved over utility poles near the Lahaina Gateway, just north of the business district.
Bro, I'm hitting it, but it's just not going down.
A few minutes later, 2 officers use a garden hose in a burning shed off Lahaina Luna Road. A brave but futile effort, as minutes later, they were seeing fires all around.
That's a house on fire.
Bro, everything is on fire. What house was that?
Cetera, we gotta get
All the cars down.
down Luna. It's jumping. The cars are stopped and the fire's like right next to the cars.
At 3:40, a chilling report, the fire had passed over the 4-lane concrete Lahaina bypass and began racing towards central Lahaina.
The fire jumped the highway.
You gotta go! You gotta go!
Evacuation became more complicated as the fire crossed Honoapi'ilani Highway and brought down power lines.
We've been standstill at Shaw Street for a while. This wind changes. All of us are trapped here.
The police, fire, and ambulance teams were on their own, sometimes coming across personal tragedy.
Oh, they're shooting it. Oh, this is your house? Yeah. Oh, okay, shoot.
But they were undeterred from their duty.
Please, it's creeping up on us at Shaw.
We have a home on front and not home on the fully engulfed.
At about 5:30 up the hill by Lahaina Intermediate School, an officer pulls a hose to fight a fire that apparently rekindled at the site of the first fire of the morning. Whether electric lines caused that fire or whether firefighters left it unwatched too soon are the subjects of lawsuits. And some who barely survived were appearing out of the darkness.
This is crazy. Everything is just so chaotic down there. It's like a nightmare. Right, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's like a scene from the apocalypse. It's like zombies.
The apocalypse zombies. Maui's police chief has said the department is formally reviewing its response and systems. They will also be reviewed in the courts and by the Attorney General, but so far, nothing has shown that these officers on the street and their dispatchers performed with anything less than dedication and duty. Daryl Huff, Hawaii News Now.
The Maui Fire Department is reminding the public they may be seeing additional activity from firefighters throughout the day. MFD is conducting wildland live fire training in the fields below Maui Tropical Plantation in Wailuku. Officials say smoke may be visible in the area during that time, so don't be alarmed. The training will also include multiple fire trucks and other firefighting equipment to ensure proper control. The department said firefighters will mop up the fire area after the training is completed. Portions of Lahaina remain off limits, but more residents will soon be able to enter the burn zone. On Friday and Saturday, restrictions will be lifted for zones 9F and 9G. Those areas include streets between Kalena and Kelawea streets, including Kalaikini Street. Vehicle passes will be required for access those first 2 days, which will be allowed from 7 to 3. A new survey shows what wildfires say they need most in the wake of the disaster. 570 households were polled by the Department of Health. 26% identified financial recovery as their main need. 24% said finding a permanent residence was the most important. And about half reported being denied by at least one assistance program. More than half are still in non-congregate shelters and hotels. For a link to the full report, head over to hawaiinewsnow.com. Happening today, the sentencing for convicted murderer Stephen Brown. He was found guilty back in January for the gruesome killing of Thelma Boinville at a North Shore vacation rental in 2017. His accomplice and then girlfriend Haley Danduran was also convicted of murder in August. Brown faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. Danduran's sentencing, meanwhile, is currently set for later this month on the 15th. She also faces life in prison, but with a chance at parole. Now to a story out of Kaka'ako. An unpermitted business has some of its nearest neighbors looking for somewhere else to live. Jolani Martinez details the complaints.
The Honolulu Liquor Commission says it's investigating a nightclub inside this turquoise building on Cook Street in Kaka'ako. They say it's operating without an active liquor license. Neighbors want it shut down.
Absolute chaos that is going on here.
This neighbor, who's too afraid of retaliation to be identified, says he took this video in March, showing people arguing in a parking lot. He says it's a common occurrence because the attic stays open until 5 a.m. The club openly advertises itself on social media as an after-hours ultra lounge.
It's mostly fighting and loud music and just people doing stupid things right on the parking lot.
Sometimes like upwards of 15 to 20 people just breaking out in fights in the middle of the street. I have a very young child and he has school in the morning, and it just tends to get really, really out of control.
This building manager, who also asked not to be identified, says she often gets complaints from residents, especially on Wednesdays and Sundays from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m.
And then there's motorcycles that race up and down the street that are very loud, and they'll just do circles around the streets for 20-30 minutes at a time. And it echoes. We're a high-rise, so it's kind of like a fishbowl, and the sound echoes very loudly.
It is literally sleepless nights. Why can't anyone do anything about it?
The manager says they have a high turnover rate because the noise causes tenants to move.
I feel helpless, honestly. I've kind of exhausted all of my options. The previous manager, she also kind of exhausted all of her options. There's not much that we can do, unfortunately.
A city spokesperson says the attic has no liquor license, and the city does not offer any sort of permit or license for any bar to operate past 4 a.m. The attic's social media shows advertisements going back a year and a half. It's unclear why it's never been shut down. The Attic Hawaii has no direct number available online to call, so we've reached out to them through their social media platform and are waiting to hear back. Reporting from Kaka'ako, Jolani Martinez, Hawaii News Now.
Now to a major development on a story we've been closely following. The former Hawaii teacher who was stuck in Gaza for over 3 weeks is now out of the war zone. Ramona Okumura's family confirms with Hawaii News Now she has been able to cross the Rafah border into Egypt. We're told she's now on a bus on a 5-hour ride to Egypt's capital of Cairo. She should be arriving there at about 1 p.m. Hawaii time. The 71-year-old aid worker had been texting with family throughout her ordeal, describing how bombs fell just blocks from her shelter. Thankfully, Ramona was not hurt. And Okumura joins hundreds of others now allowed to leave the Gaza area. Tina Kraus reports from Tel Aviv.
Hundreds of Palestinians holding dual citizenship left Gaza Wednesday, including some Americans, through the Rafah border crossing into Egypt. Ambulances filled with dozens of injured Palestinians were also allowed to leave. Headed into Gaza, more humanitarian aid, though health officials say the supplies are still just a fraction of what's needed for the millions of civilians living in the Hamas-controlled territory, which has been almost completely cut off since the brutal terror attack on Israel last month. The humanitarian breakthrough comes as Israel intensifies its military operations in Gaza. Hamas says Israeli missile strikes on the northern Jabalia refugee camp killed and injured dozens of civilians. Israel says the strikes killed dozens of Hamas fighters, including a senior commander, and destroyed a tunnel complex. In Jerusalem, mourners gathered for the funeral of one of at least 16 soldiers Israel says have been killed since the start of the ground invasion. While in Tel Aviv, sirens warned of incoming rockets, sending Israelis running to shelters.
Israelis we spoke to say every day is a struggle with the heartbreak and anxiety war brings.
You have to take a deep breath to fill the lungs with breath. With air.
To feel life.
To feel life, to go on.
Local markets here are much emptier than usual as Israelis try to find their own way to live through a war they're being told will be long and difficult. Tina Kraus, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
In New York, Donald Trump Jr. called to the stand to testify in the civil fraud trial against the Trump Organization. Graham Cates has the story.
Donald Trump Jr. was called to the stand today, the first of 4 members of the Trump family who will testify about their involvement in what the New York State Attorney General calls a decade of fraud at the Trump Organization. Trump Jr. took the opportunity to defend his involvement in the creation of financial statements that the Attorney General says are at the center of the case, in which they say the Trumps got some $250 million in extra benefits through contracts with banks and insurance companies that were presented with financial information that was fraudulently achieved. Trump said he relied on highly paid accountants to come up with the figures that were presented to banks, and that it wasn't his fault that those figures ended up being incorrect. On Thursday, Eric Trump is expected to take the stand. On Monday, former President Donald Trump himself will be called to the stand, and after him, Ivanka Trump. Graham Cates, CBS News, New York.
Hawaii's largest public school has settled a gender equity lawsuit filed 5 years ago. Plaintiffs sued Campbell High for Title IX violations, saying it was unfair female student athletes had to change in teachers' closets, school bathrooms, and a nearby Burger King, while boys had their own locker room. As part of the settlement, Campbell must hire an independent evaluator to make sure female student athletes receive equal athletic opportunities, access, and treatment. Campbell must also set up a hotline and online complaint system to report violations. In UH Manoa this morning, a revitalized effort to raise money for the university. School leadership and members of the UH Foundation announced the launch of For UH for Hawaii. It is considered the largest comprehensive fundraising campaign in state and school history. The goal is $1 billion, which will be used to fund work for students, faculty, and researchers across all of UH's 10 campuses.
You can't go anywhere in Hawaii without encountering our alumni as leaders and as the people who are moving this entire state forward. And I just couldn't be prouder of what we're up to and grateful for the support we get from our community.
So as I reflect on $1 billion, you know, as a banker, I really studied, well, as a Portuguese banker, I get really deep into these things. And I finally realized that $1 billion is just an extra zero from the 100 million. So we have no problem here. We're gonna make this thing go.
Walter Dodds Jr. also led a campaign for the university in the late 90s and early 2000s, helping raise over $100 million. Well, what a scene on Oahu's South Shore this week. At least 2 tiger sharks took turns feeding on a turtle off of Magic Island. A warning, this video may be unsettling for some. Oh, Water safety officer Blaine Fujita shot this while making the rounds on a jet ski. Later in the afternoon, lifeguards reported multiple sharks about 20 yards offshore in Waikiki. There have been numerous sightings in town the past few weeks as they come closer to shore in the fall to pup and mate. And 2 surfers were bitten earlier this month on the north shores of Oahu and Kauai. And let's give you a look outside right now. Welcome to November, everyone. Sunny skies to start off the new month. We'll have your full forecast after this brief break.
with no significant rainfall, the drought conditions will likely get worse before they get better. That's the outlook. And you can see that much of Hawaii Island is under severe drought. Couple spots under extreme drought. We've got extreme drought for South and West Maui. No relief in sight for those areas, although East Maui might pick up a little bit. That will help. Our windward side is under moderate drought and maybe abnormally dry. That's for the Kahaluu area, but most of the island under severe drought, including the border right where Mililani Mauka is and where that fire is burning, and also out towards the west Kauai. They're under severe drought as well. So again, no relief anytime soon, except for when those trade winds come in, because now we're thinking that the cold front, which was supposed to bring a lot of rainfall Monday, Tuesday, might not. Most of the rain might miss us, but there's still a chance for that to change, so don't bank on that. But hopefully we get more rain early next week to help us with those very dry conditions.
All eyes on the U.S. Federal Reserve today on the future of interest rates. Mike Valerio explains.
Well, earlier this afternoon, we heard from the Fed Chair, Jay Powell, and he said something that is certainly off the table at the moment, and that would be cuts in interest rates.
The economy is booming. The highest interest rates in more than 20 years yet to dampen the jobs market, home prices, or consumer spending. However, the increased cost of borrowing will likely take a toll in the months ahead.
Expect the Federal Reserve to maintain a vigilant posture, even if they're not raising rates, just in an effort to keep conditions tight and push inflation closer to that 2% mark. There's also some concern about the health of a lot of consumers.
Consumers are wary. Confidence in the economy is down for the third month in a row, even as spending and wages are up.
Inflation is hit hardest in categories that are absolute necessities. Household expenses are considerably higher than they were just a few years ago, and the income may not have kept up.
And for many, that means more borrowing.
I think if you paint with a broad brush, it ignores the reality that about 60% of households are living paycheck to paycheck. We've seen credit card balances going up at a time when credit card rates are at a record high.
While the economy has remained stronger for longer than economists anticipated, Bankrate.com's Greg McBride says a downturn could still come in 2024, and people should be prepared if and when recession hits.
Pay down debt, particularly high-cost debt like credit cards, boost your emergency savings. That's going to be a buffer between you and high-cost debt if you have an income disruption.
So to bring this full circle, why is this all happening? Well, this is all, according to the Fed, to bring down demand, to cool off the economy, and that cools inflation. That is the Federal Reserve's main mission. In Los Angeles, I'm Mike Valerio. Back to you.
Important recall info for parents. This Costco brand Jump Spin and Play Activity Center is being recalled by its manufacturer. Company says to stop using it immediately. The straps can detach or break, potentially causing injury. It's exclusively sold at Walmart. We have the model numbers listed on our website. All right, now to some fun headlines right now. The Collins Dictionary has released its 2023 Word of the Year. I mean, it's early November, but I guess we can call it already, right? The winner is AI as an artificial intelligence. Collins defines AI as a term that describes the modeling of human mental functions by computer programs. Stories about AI have dominated the headlines this year amid the technology's rapid development. It is moving into all different industries right now. I mean, it's a lot of talk about what is happening with it in Washington. So AI, your early winner for 2023 Word of the Year. Well, now that Halloween is wrapped up, it's now time to look ahead to the holidays, and Starbucks this week is releasing its line of festive holiday cups. Starting tomorrow, hot drinks will be served in 4 festive cups, clad in holiday red and Starbucks green with a mood-boosting magenta. Starbucks says the magenta accent lifts the traditional colors and makes the red even brighter. Doesn't that pop? Iced drinks are also getting a holiday makeover with playful bubbles and sparkles. Fun cups right there. It's always a fun time of year and always a great time for a pumpkin spice latte, right? Well, now for an update on the breaking news that we brought you at the top of the show, the Mililani Mauka wildfire burning in the region above the Mililani Mauka neighborhood for a third straight day. It is growing slowly, moving in an easterly direction. HFD, federal, and state assets addressing this blaze. 710 acres in size as of 7 a.m. Containment stands at 30%. This is a shot taken by the HFD drone team, looking at just, you see how the smoke cloud is moving above, looking really the expanse of this blaze. So again, the wildfire burning for a third day. The expectation is that there will be a news conference at around 4 o'clock this afternoon, bringing you the very latest. So hopefully we get a positive update that containment really grows as firefighters are working hard to get a handle on this. Well, that does it for us on This Is Now. We'll see you back first at 4 o'clock, and also stay with us for any updates online at hawaiinewsnow.com.